I'd like to take a point of view that RPA and operational excellence, what we've seen is that it actually is a match made in heaven. So you'll hear the remainder of the presentation, I'm going to go through it with the thought of why is operational excellence, whether it's process excellence, Six Sigma, Lean, et cetera, why are those, that's a great place to start in driving RPA initiatives. RPA being a part of a digital workforce, which is part of a larger digital transformation. So that'll be the theme as we go through this. I'm going to do quick introductions for myself, give you a sense of, so I know what you know about RPA. I'll give you a little background about what I know about operational excellence, so you know where we're coming from. A little bit company overview, talk about RPA as not just another automation tool. I had 3 different meetings this morning. Everyone came in with the I've heard of RPA, but didn't really have a good sense of how it was any different than other automation tools. Then some client success stories, and then kind of cap it off with why we think operational excellence is a great place to start to drive an RPA initiative, and then we'll take questions if we've got more time. A little bit about my own background. So prior to joining Automation Anywhere, I spent about 15 years at a management consulting firm doing a lot of operational excellence work. So we would centralize processes and standardize and optimize them, move them to low-cost locations, outsource them, automate everything we could. We'd been doing that, advising clients on it for years and years. Got to a point, at a certain point in time, where we thought, we've got this down. We know exactly how far we can take this with clients. And at the end of 2014, we were negotiating a BPO contract on behalf of a client. And one of the bidders came in with a best and final offer where they had cut their price in half without changing any of their SLAs or terms and conditions and could still make money doing it that way. And we thought something's changed. Automation has taken a leap forward if the BPO provider can cut their price in half without changing SLAs and still make money on the deal. So we began doing our due diligence, this consulting firm. We said we should be in the RPA business. We should be advising clients on using RPA and cognitive tech. And so for 2 years, I was building bots for clients, helping clients implement RPA. Automation Anywhere was one of my partners. At a certain point in time when we sold that consulting firm, I joined Automation Anywhere. So to give you a perspective background on where I'm coming from in this conversation. Now, to kind of over the so what factor, are clients really doing this at scale? Does it matter? Is it having any impact? Automation Anywhere has been in business, in the RPA business, for over 14 years. We have over 1,000 plus enterprise customers using the product. We've trained over 35,000 people to use the product. And across our client base, equivalent of 600,000 FTEs, bots doing the work of 600,000 FTEs. So a lot of companies are doing this at very large scale. So what's different with RPA? You've had automation and business process automation in different forms for 20 plus years. ERP systems, BPM systems, workflow tools, point solutions, people writing macros and VB scripts. So after 20 years of all those forms of automation, why do we still have so many people in operations environments? It's usually for one of 2 reasons. Either you cannot integrate the back-end systems, so you throw people at it and have people moving data between the systems, or you could integrate those systems, but there's just no cost-effective way to do so. IT has said they can't launch the project for 12 months, it's going to cost X million dollars, it'll take a year to do. Business case says just keep throwing people at it. So RPA changes the dynamic there on both of those fronts because the bots that you build interact with the systems the same way people do. They log into them using a username and password. Which means to automate a process, you don't have to change the process. Now I know we're in an operational excellence event and everyone would talk about process improvement. Every bot I ever built for 2 years, we made some change to the process. We did re-engineer it as we built the bot, but you don't have to. You could just build the bot to execute it the same way people do it today. You don't need to change the systems. So you don't need to go to IT and say, we need to change these back-end systems. I need it to work this way. I need integrations at this database layer. I need APIs into this system. You don't need to do any of that to automate the processes. Business users can build the bots. This is a really key one. You don't have to be a programmer to automate a process. You just have to be trained to use the product. You have a recorder function similar to a macro. There are 550 plus drag and drop commands with little wizards walking a business user through how to automate a process. The key here with RPA is you don't have a small team of people who are able to write code who can automate processes. You might have a client like ANZ Bank of ours who has over 500 people in their business units automating processes. And they can do so much faster. You can build a bot in a matter of weeks, usually 4 to 8 weeks from ideation to deployment versus 4 to 8 months of automating a process using another means. So what we're going for is consumer-grade usability. So think of the apps on all of our phones in our pockets with enterprise-grade scalability, and the combination of those two concepts. Just to kind of drive it home further, so the bots interact with systems like people. Your human workforce versus your digital workforce. So now we've established that there's a whole set of processes that you keep having to throw people at because there's no good integration solution for it. For those people, you have the cost of hiring the person, onboarding them, their comp and benefits. You then have a workstation that they work at. You provide them a laptop or desktop. You fill out the security administration form. You give them access to the different systems they need to do their jobs, and then you train them. They've got desktop procedures, training manuals. They work shadow people, and then they know how to execute and do their process. With digital labor, you say, I want another license. And you put that license typically on virtual machines. You could put it on the same laptop you would have given the person. Better practice to put it on virtual machines, but you could do it on a laptop, on a desktop, on a VM, a VDI, on-premise, on the cloud. It's a very flexible deployment model. But wherever you put it, the bot's basically sitting on the equivalent of a human user's laptop. And you give that bot logical access. It needs a username and password to log into the systems the same way a human user would. And then you train it in the processes and systems, business rules to do the job, and you do that in a dashboard with the recording function and drag and drop functionality. So it's very easy for business users to use. In terms of what types of processes are automated, it's completely process agnostic. So different companies organize different ways, their functional areas, their departments, but this is a common way to talk to companies in different industries about different functions and different process areas within those functions, and then different discrete processes within those process areas. Our product has been used to automate processes in all of these functional areas and departments. So whether it's something in record to report, your month-end reports, it's updating vendor master data, it's a three-way match around a PO process, it's onboarding and offboarding of human resources. Whatever the process is, as long as it has business rules and structured digital data, it can be automated. So these bots are not specific to one type of process. And then what's the benefit of leveraging digital labor over human labor? First is labor cost savings. So either reduction or avoidance, because the bot license costs less than the fully loaded annual cost of human labor, no matter what part of the world you're in. The bots have 24 by 365 coverage, so not only is that a productivity gain, but they work on the weekends, overnight, holidays, so you have availability around the clock. Faster processing, say typically 5 to 10x, because it depends. And it depends on what systems they're using. If a human user launches a system and waits for the little spinning wheel to complete, the bot has to wait as well because it's using that system just like a human user does. But for an example, a client recently had an invoice process where they had to append a lot of backup data to the invoices because of the nature of their business. 150 pages of backup data would take a biller in that department on average 4 to 5 hours to produce an invoice and get it out the door. The bot that we built took 11 minutes on average to do the same work. It's a flexible and scalable workforce because unlike the person that you hired in to work in the HR department, they can't really be cross-trained very effectively to work in finance and accounting or in supply chain. Your bot license can work in the morning in HR, in the middle of the day in IT, and the afternoon in finance and accounting. Much greater improved compliance, controls, auditability. So you think of your control functions where you've set up your processes, your control points, and you do QA and QC to make sure that people are executing the processes appropriately. The bots never deviate from the process. Once you've established what the business rules are, they're not making any decisions, there is no human error. You have 100% compliance with the rules as they've been given to the bots, and an audit trail of all the actions that the bot took and what human user told the bot to take that action. So from a compliance, controls, auditability, which also translates through to a security. Bots don't write down their passwords on paper on the edge of the desk. There's no social engineering to trick them into divulging their information. They don't click on phishing emails and so on. You have greater access to real-time data and business intelligence. And so I want to draw a distinction. That's not just the operational analytics of how many bots handled how many transactions, what was the handle time, the time of day, the results, and so on. That's all really good, and that's necessary. But the business data being handled by the bots as it flows through those transactions. You can run real-time analytics on all of that data, even though it resides in many disparate systems. And finally, happier employees. So there's usually a part of this conversation that goes on to talk about job replacement, and the type of activities that are being eliminated with RPA are rote, mundane, repetitive tasks that humans don't enjoy doing, don't do very well, and there's usually a lot of churn in those positions. So in many cases, clients use bots to eliminate a portion of a person's daily activities, allowing that person to spend that time with higher value add activities that they can deliver to the business. Actually, I'll go back real quick. Any questions from the audience at this point? Because that's kind of ending the concept RPA, digital workforce, how it's different from traditional business process automation. Now we're going to move on to some client success stories. So before we do, any questions?
Any questions for Derek? I've got a mic here for you if you need it. Okay, if not, let's keep going.
Okay. So tying this back to the statement I made at the top of the presentation that operational excellence teams are a great place to drive RPA within an organization. ANZ Bank may not be a household name here because it stands for Australia New Zealand Bank, but it is a very large bank in Asia Pacific with over 46,000 employees. A little over 3 years ago, they began their RPA journey with us. And the below stats that you see were from about 6 months ago, so now they've all increased by this point in time. But the initiative at ANZ Bank was driven by a lady named Pankajam, who was head of operational excellence for ANZ Bank. And with the initiative that she led had time to pay back in the first 9.4 months. You can tell it was led by an OPEX person. She's got it down to 9.4 months for the time to pay back. They had at September 2017, 2,300 bots running in 85% of the processes in 17 different countries. So just to give you a sense of the size and scale. So we talked about earlier how business users can be trained to use the product and build bots, how quick and easy it is to deploy bots in weeks and not months. And when you combine those two things and you start doing this at scale, 3 years later, you have over 2,300 bots running. Her team is producing 20 different projects a week. They've got 500 people building bots. On average, it takes 7 weeks for every process they automate to deploy that from ideation of vetting, is this a good process, to putting the bot into production. At this pace, they're freeing up 1 FTE per day through the use of digital labor. And back to the compliance aspects, 34 regulatory breaches had been avoided in the 2.5-year period. Give another example of one that's less mature, see what a different approach if looking at the first 12 months. McKesson, which may be more of a household name in North America since it's a Fortune 5 company, so 76,000 employees, almost $200 billion in revenue. A stat that's not up here, they process over 550 million transactions per year. They're 1 year into the RPA initiative, also achieved payback on their original investment in the first year. This data was actually taken for a presentation I gave at an OPEX events in January with our client from McKesson, where in the way she had phrased it of 25 plus major processes have been automated. And she said, we haven't kept track of all the different subtasks, the process variants, but from our point of view, 25 plus major processes have been automated to date. They've got a slightly slower deployment of 8 to 12 weeks from ideation to deployment. Now they're only 1 year into the initiative, whereas ANZ Bank is now in year 3, so the maturation of their processes and capabilities. But McKesson spends a significant amount of time up front on process re-engineering before building the bots. So that extends their timeline a little bit, but then they feel that the benefit pays for the lack of speed. Or the reduced speed, I should say. Reduced speed, 8 to 12 weeks, not 8 to 12 months. The business case that they had originally laid out was achieved solely through labor cost reduction and avoidance. but they saw additional ROI via working capital improvements, IT cost reduction. They had a backlog of IT projects that were set to be launched to automate many of these processes, and those projects were able to be removed from IT portfolio. And I've got some example use cases here and some funny names that the McKesson operations folks gave their bots. So the Yoda bot, which works in accounts receivable, reduced the credit and rebill volume by 31%. The Maggie bot, first day in production, did a backlog of what would take people 4 weeks backlog to do the work. Did it in the first day it was put into production. And then the Apollo bot reduced communication time from 2 weeks to 1 day. So in many cases, the cost comparison between human labor and digital labor, that business benefit is obvious. But in many cases with clients, it's the speed and accuracy and availability of transaction processing that's the true business driver for using RPA.
Before you automate?
So I heard the question. I can repeat it in case. The question was, what are my thoughts on the need for process re-engineering before automating a process? And we used to have, so in the consulting firm, we had some good debates on this because the practice that I built had a lot of people that came from Six Sigma and Lean backgrounds, and a lot of people that came from development backgrounds. So there was the dogmatic approach of, the process needs to be perfect before you automate it, to don't ever touch the process, just automate it exactly as is. And what we found was, most cases we'd be somewhere in the middle. And it was just a pragmatic approach of, when we're building the bot for a client, if the re-engineering effort was going to take 6 months and yield a 10% productivity gain, and we could automate the process in 6 weeks and increase the speed and the accuracy and all of those things in 6 weeks, we would just automate it with some small tweaks. If the re-engineering exercise was going to take 2 months and standardize 5 different processes into one and eliminate a massive number of the steps, we would go through the re-engineering effort. And back to my statement from earlier, we never built a bot that we didn't tweak the process in some way as we automated it. So I think I would say that yes, always, if there's a re-engineering opportunity, and there almost always is, to go address that as you're building the bot, because oftentimes it's identified. When you start to build the bot, because you have to get down to the keystroke level, you start to see re-engineering opportunities, and in every case we would take them. But what we advise clients to avoid doing was going through a long duration exercise that might yield smaller benefits than automating the process, even though the process might have been subpar. But in every case, just look at it as a business case. Any other? And then here's my point of view on why do I think operational excellence is uniquely positioned to drive RPA from these experiences. It's because RPA is a uniquely process-oriented technology. You're building a bot to automate the process the same way people would have done it. And so when you go through that exercise, you're going through a lot of the same exercises that Six Sigma and Lean teams do when they're trying to understand how a person does it and why they do it a certain way, and is there an opportunity to do it differently. So it is very process-oriented technology. Those teams within an organization will typically have an understanding of end-to-end processes across departments, because when I was in the consulting practice and we'd talk to the person that ran order to cash and the person that ran procure to pay and the person that ran record to report, but it was hard to, in many cases, get an overarching view of the life cycle of the transactions as they flew across the organization. Operational excellence teams have that view already. And then more importantly, they have relationships with those process owners and process SMEs. Because in all of my bot building exercises with clients, if the process owners and process SMEs did not want to have their process automated, it was going to be very hard to have an effective RPA process. So I found some of the comments around organizational change management and head and heart were very near and dear to my heart. The knowledge of those processes of which ones can no longer be improved. So operational excellence teams have been asked by different business units to look at different processes. They've gone through the list and they've improved what they can from process engineering, from automation, and there's a certain amount of process they said, there's nothing more we can do there. We're not going to touch that one again. they've got that backlog of the ones that couldn't be touched with traditional forms of automation. So the client from McKesson said the first thing we did was just look at our list of all the processes we said could not be improved and went back to it and revisited it with RPA. And then the ability to quickly assess both the feasibility and the ROI that would come from automating that process. Process excellence people are just uniquely positioned to do it. Now that was all about which processes should be automated. The next one is about then going to automate those processes, and this comes into where those tweaks to the process that are made during the automation that can enable a process that otherwise maybe 80% of the transactions that flowed through the process could be automated if we didn't change it, but we can make a few small tweaks here and automate 95% of the transactions flowing through that process. Changes that can be made to amplify RPA. So that's why, from my perspective, and when we've seen this at clients, so it's not just a logical reasoning, but experience-based, operational excellence teams are a great driver for RPA initiatives. So as we talked about, digital transformation is coming, and it is I think it was described as a coming wave, and digital workforce is certainly going to be part of any digital transformation in organization. And I think operational excellence teams and organizations have a great opportunity to be the driver of that component of the digital transformation. So that would be my summary on how the two are a match made in heaven. What questions from the audience?
We have one here.
Just curious, one of the challenges that we're having with Walmart right now is we're implementing a lot of bots, but at the same time we're sunsetting a lot of legacy systems. Any insights on techniques that can help you keep configuration control up? Because once you've mapped a keystroke level in one place and then sunset the system, you're in for nasty surprises if you don't have good control.
Well, I think the first thing is the bots interact with the underlying systems, right? Just like human users do. So when you change out the underlying systems, you have to retrain the bots just like you would have retrained users. So that's the type of change we're talking about. You're changing out the core systems that the bots are using. You would have had to retrain the human users. You also have to retrain the bots. The good news is, instead of retraining hundreds or perhaps thousands of human users how to use the new system, you train the bot once centrally, and then all of the bots that are executing it know what to do. So the change management, while it's required, is actually easier than retraining hundreds or maybe thousands of people and going through that QA and QC exercise. But in terms of knowing what you're going to need to rebuild, and I can only speak from our product. So from our product, all of the applications that are being used by the bot are mapped out, so you know which bots are touching which applications, which ones it needs to do the job. So you have a view into, okay, if I know this application is changing, which bots are going to be affected by it, which ones are executing processes that use that application. It also enables you to take a snapshot of the underlying application at a point in time and then compare it to a newly introduced version of that application. And the calibration tool tells you, here are all the changes you need to make at the different process steps. So there are things you can do to make it easier, but there's nothing you can do to avoid the need to retrain the bot, just like you can't avoid the need to retrain the people.
If I can follow on, I think everyone, the people that are doing that, is it best to leave that with the process owner, give it to a product owner, team, give it to a center coordinator? What's the best mechanism to make sure that we don't miss that?
Yeah, so it depends on how many bots are in operation. So when clients start, this goes to more of RPA COE and operating model. And so clients will start with a centralized COE, and you have a small team of people who are the only people who own RPA within the organization, and they deliver it as a service, basically, to other parts of the organization. And then you can go to a federated model where you have that centralized team has all of the governance and standards and best practices, and they enable different business units. But then people within the different business units, the process owners, the process SMEs, are the ones building their own bots. And in that model, when you've deployed and now have hundreds and in some cases thousands of bots that were created by different business users running their own processes, the prevailing way that clients have done that is to say that the process owner who owns it manually and used to have people doing that for them in their department owns that bot from a process standpoint. Now, the laptop that the bot's running on, IT still owns. Right? If the bot needs a new username and password to a new system because it's been revoked, IT still owns it. But if the business rule changed, If you're going to add a different step into the process, the process owners will typically take that once you reach a certain amount of scale. It becomes too difficult to manage centrally.
Yes, other question?
I want to build off of that theme. So in the deployments that you experience or your customers experience, how big of a battle between IT and the actual process people or business people that owns? Because typically it seems like IT would be marketing this as well, but then they want to own it. Have you experienced those kind of battles?
Short answer, yes. The majority of clients, and specifically over the last 3 years, business brings this into an organization, and then IT supports them. There has been a change over the last 12 months of more IT organizations being the originator of bringing RPA into an organization to get out in front of that. There have been more clients who have very collaborative and supporting IT groups that they transition the ownership to. So if this question had been posed to me 2 years ago, I would have said 95% of it is business owned and IT supported really just from an infrastructure perspective. It's starting to shift with IT taking ownership more as the entry point into the organization, and then also the business being willing to pass ownership to IT.
Excellent. So Derek, thank you very much. Round of applause for Derek.